lesson 27. This is the last time we finish reading the Hatha Yoga Pradipika for now. And we're in chapter 1, Sutra 48. Actually last week we should have continued reading until 49, but we stopped at 47, which was unintentional, but the lecture was already 1 hour and 15 minutes, so it was actually long enough. We continue with 48, which continues explaining Padmasana, which was introduced last week. Assuming well the Padmasana, with the palms one upon the other, fix the chin firmly upon the chest and contemplating Brahman in the mind, repeatedly raise the apana upwards by, erase that. Repeatedly raise the apana upwards and bring the prana just drawn in downwards. So, like the previous two exercises, clearly this is a meditation exercise and an energy control exercise. You turbocharge the energies in this exercise. You don't do that by contracting the anus, as is written between square brackets. You do that by concentration in Ajna Chakra. Energy goes where thought goes. When you concentrate, meditate on nada, here is where a huge ball of energy occurs as a result of the intensity of your concentration, meditation. That pulls up the energy, apana prana, which is the energy in Muladhara chakra. So this is related to the Shakti energy that we let flow in the pranayama exercise, and it's related to the Kundalini effect. So meditation is important. Concentration, developing the power of thought. Energy goes where thought goes. Based on that principle, we not only pull in energy from the bottom, but this sutra also mentioned that the prana you have just drawn in is brought downwards. So it's not just a Kundalini exercise. You not only let energy rise up, but while you concentrate, meditate, without you actually having to focus on it deliberately, the power of your concentration meditation allows large amounts of Shiva energy to flow in. Now this is something not usually told in a basic course, because you focus on all the exercises that you have rather superficially. But when you sit down and concentrate, meditate, build up a meditation, you are already doing energy control. So why do we do the pranayama exercises then? That is to make our effort to control energy, to move energy, to accelerate energy, to make that more efficient. But also to learn to understand how it works and to learn to understand how we function in various different conditions during various different times of the day and the night. So the pranayama looks rather superficial. We need to go through the steps, through the motions, but the main part of what we're doing is what we do after the pranayama, the concentration, meditation on nada. there is a little bit of additional text to Sutra 48 that tells us about the power of this exercise, the benefits, effect of this exercise. By this, a man, woman obtains equal knowledge through the power of Kundalini. Here you see, interestingly, the link between the energy rising up and knowledge. We think knowledge comes from books, which is partially true. But even without ever having been in a classroom, without even being able to read or write, people can have unequal knowledge simply by cultivating the location where knowledge occurs, where insight, wisdom, vision occur, in the crown chakra. And the ancient people clearly had insight in how that was brought about. That energy, that center where insight, wisdom, knowledge is located, needs to be fueled by energy that comes from the bottom. In a supercharged variation, that energy is called Kundalini. In a normal condition, we call it Shakti. Shakti Kundalini is the same, but Kundalini is stronger, reinforced. Sutra 49. The yogin seated in the Padmasana posture, by steadying the energy drawn in through the nadis, becomes liberated. There can be no doubt about this. We talked about liberation and emancipation at length last week. That is probably why the lecture was so long. And we had to skip those two final sutras. Liberation is a word that is surrounded by a lot of mystery, and many people see it as an interesting subject, but not really practically applicable to our personal daily lives. But liberation is something that takes place over years. It's a process in which you more and more connect with your true self, the core, the essence of yourself, which is a natural process taking place. You don't have to sit down and say, now I want to connect with the essence of myself, because it really doesn't work like that. It's a natural process, and it is very gradual, so it takes years. Sutra 50. Then the Simasana is described. Place the ankles below the groin on either side of the perineum, the right ankle on the left side of it and the left ankle on the right. 51. Place the palms upon the knees, spread out the fingers, and with open mouth look at the tip of the nose with concentrated mind. So first, the last part, that you look at the tip of the nose with concentrated mind. You don't do that literally, again, unless you do children yoga, then it is big fun. It is, again, like the previous two exercises, clearly indicated that this is not a physical exercise. This is energy control through concentration meditation. The open mouth is referring to Ajna Chakra, not literally your mouth, and looking at the tip of the nose with concentrated mind. Was mentioned last week also with Padmasana. It's not literally looking at the tip of your nose, but at the center of the head, where the corresponding circle of Muladhara Chakra is located. And we know that it is referring to that because the nose The function of the nose is smell, which is the function of Muladhara chakra. So let's have a look at Simasana. This is fun. When you do children yoga, you do it as described. You balance on your knees, cross the ankles as indicated in the text, fingers spread, hollow back, and you stick out your tongue and you cross your eyes and you have a blast with kids. Kids yoga should never be serious, always be playful. You cannot force them to stand still. You cannot explain that this is energy control, meditation, what have you. Just play, fool around, let them discover their bodies and just have a lot of fun. I've done it in the past for a while. It's exhausting, but fun, really fun. Next sutra will give us an indication of what this strange posture aims to achieve. First of all, Sutra 52, this Simasana is held in great esteem by the highest of yogins. This most excellent asana facilitates the three bandhas. Try it out. The three bandhas, Jalandhara bandha, Uddiyana bandha, and Mula bandha, Uddiyana bandha, and Jalandhara bandha. You make a hollow back. Because you actively tilt your pelvis, you feel, if you pay attention with your eyes closed, you feel some Shivanamukti, a little coolness at the tailbone. Because you're actively engaged, your tummy is tucked in and you stretch up the neck. One of the sutras before told us that the bandhas will occur spontaneously as a result of yoga practice. Generally, bandhas are approached in a very superficial way. Sometimes people who know a little bit about yoga look at me with eyes full of anticipation and say, "Are we going to learn about the bandhas too?" As if there is some magical box with bandhas that you can apply. But bandhas are very subtle and people don't even realize that they are activating. They don't even realize when they are activating, when they actually do. It's simply a result of increased straightness, which results from your regular practice of yoga naturally. Merve, I never saw your hair.
Oh, that's your first time.
I thought we have a new student today.
Oh.
Come in. So that was Simasana. Actually, there is a variation of Simasana which you do. You can do in Padmasana. And there, you put your hands. You sit with a hollow back. You tuck in the chin. You can stick out your tongue if you like. But that's not the point. Sutra 53. Next, the Bhadra is described. Bhadrasana is described. Place the ankles below the groin on the sides of the perineum, the left ankle on the left and the right ankle on the right. Foot soles together. Then firmly hold the feet with the hands which are on their sides and remain motionless. This is Bhadrasana. It destroys all diseases. The yogins who have become siddhas call this Gorakshasana. Gorakshasana is the third yogi in the lineage starting from God Shiva, Machendra, and then followed by Goraksha. So that tells us that this is an important, powerful asana like the previous two actually. Like or the previous 3. We had 4 quintessential poses of Shiva. Starting with Siddhasana, sitting on the heel, a pure Kundalini pose, followed by Padmasana, Siddhasana, and now we have the 4th one, which is Bhadrasana. So you put your feet together. It's a common stretch people often do in the gym as a warm-up or cool-down, but people habitually do stupid things like that. That's shocking the muscles, and it leads to Shakti generation, so it's, for us as yogis, it's defeating the purpose. It may be uncomfortable at first because it involves the biggest muscles in your body, the thighs. No despair, it takes time. Remember the word gradual. I've been sitting in this pose for many years, every morning before my early morning classes started. And to give time a chance, I would sit against the wall with the buttocks tight, the heels pulled as close as possible, and just read some news or something. Just do something to distract so time would pass easily, and with time the knees came down naturally, without force, without pain, without tearing muscles. So just at home, it's a little bit un-yogi-like, but practically very helpful. To sit against some solid object, sofa or the wall, and do something to keep you busy, to allow time to pass so that your muscles can slowly but certainly surrender and give in. With time, the knees will naturally come down. When it starts feeling comfortable, because you are locked in, you can actually push, simply putting your hands there. But be very careful not to tear a muscle. It's very painful and it takes very long to heal. And even when it heals, it often recurs. It comes back again later on. This far is the exercise as it is described, and of course you probably can imagine that you can bend forward in this pose. So when you're comfortable sitting like this, which, like the previous poses, is also a relatively effective Kundalini exercise, a concentration meditation exercise. But you can go to the next step and bend forward. Do not hold your feet, but stretch them forward so that you elongate your spine. You always want your spine to stretch up. If you keep holding on to your feet, you're probably going to bend the spine too much. Just stretch forward. If you're a little bit masochistic at home, when you have gotten used a little bit to sitting like this, and you feel that you cannot really bend forward, just grab the table, the leg of the table, and pull a little bit. But be very gentle. Just do it very gradually, so that you don't damage anything. Also, if you're very uncomfortable sitting like this at first, sitting on a cushion really helps, because that naturally tilts the pelvis forward, so your position is better sitting on a cushion. (50) 55. Thus the best of yogins, being free of fatigue in practicing asanas and bandhas, should practice purification of the nadis, mudras, etc., and control of energy. So here you see Svatmarama emphasizes that yoga is not about exercising, about asana. Asana lays a foundation that restores your natural condition of health, strength, and energy. And once that is restored, you go to the next step and you start with energy control. 56 Sutra describes the correct order in which you build that up. Asanas, the varieties of kumbhaka, which is the pranayama exercises, energy control exercises. The positions called mudra, which are exercises more powerful than pranayama, without counting and without retention. Followed by concentration upon the nada, inner sound, comprise the sequence of practice in Hatha Yoga. So you see the logical build-up here. First, you restore the physical condition. Then, pranayama to increase, accelerate energy circulation, purify the energy channels. Mudra, with mudra you reinforce that process, and then you add concentration upon the nada, which is other words for concentration, meditation, contemplation. Dharana, dhyana, samadhi. The 6th, the 7th, and the 8th step of yoga. Interesting, this is not the first time that nada is mentioned here. It was mentioned before and I drew your attention to that. Why do I do that? Because many yoga teachers have never heard of nada. And if they've heard of it or read about it, it's a superficial subject because they've never actually consciously heard nada, while it is so simple and it is so close by. 57. The brahmacharin who, following a moderate diet, is intent on yoga, renouncing the fruits of his actions, becomes a Siddha after a year. There need be no doubt about this. So, last week or so we read a sutra where Svatmarama said that perfection is achieved in 12 years. 12 years, that may sound a little bit discouraging. Here, however, he tells us that, well, perfection may take 12 years, but great results are achieved within 1 year. And I know from my own experience that from the moment that you start practicing yoga, and you do that relatively regularly, of course, big changes start occurring immediately. Not after 1 year, not after 6 months, immediately, from the moment that you start. But it does require that you are at least a bit dedicated, that you have a relative regular practice, like 6 days a week, 5-6 days a week or so at a regular time. '58. Moderate diet is defined to mean agreeable and sweet food, leaving 1/4 of the stomach free, eaten as an offering to please Shiva. Food is very important. You are what you eat. Now, a couple of years ago, when Pada came into my life, I'm normally very austere with food. And for many years, I've been doing intermittent fasting, which means that you eat between, in a time frame smaller than 8 hours. So, that, to me, that feels good. Once in a while, once every 1 or 2 years, I do a 5-day complete fast. But when everything is stable, I do intermittent fasting. When Pada came into my life, it turned everything upside down, and I stuck to my intermittent fasting. But Swatmarama already told us somewhere that when you start practicing pranayama, for example, which you can apply to any other big change in your life, you need to eat more nutritious foods. In the past, those power foods were butter, ghee, milk. And I forgot to do that, so I lost a lot of weight. My clothes became very wide. I thought I needed to buy new clothes until I realized I did it again, because it's not the first time that I lost so much weight. So 2 years ago I started eating a lot. I stopped intermittent fasting, and in the first couple of months I ate like 6-7 times a day. So I walk the dogs, come back, I eat fruit with nuts, take a nap, then I eat yogurt with oatmeal and dried fruits, and then I eat a sandwich, whole wheat bread with egg or cheese or peanut butter. Very nutritious foods. And I would continue to eat until in the evening. I started making bread pudding, which is of course kind of a sin. It's full of sugar and fat and heavy cream and what have you. But I love it. But normally I'm not attracted to eating these kind of things, but when I'm in trouble, I make a big pan of bread pudding, and it's just super. It's a real power food when you need nutrients. So I kind of noticed being scared to lose weight again by breaking my fast. But the other thing I started to notice, is that it cost me energy. And that is what this is about. You leave your stomach for 1/4 free. You fill it half with solid food, 1/4 with liquid, and 1/4 with air. Which means, do not eat until you're full. So, a couple of weeks ago, I had an epiphany and I thought, it's time to go back to intermittent fasting. Because I had a feeling of getting stuck, which is energy. And so, I still wake up very early, usually around 4, to walk the dogs. Around that time there's nobody in the park, so they can run off the leash. But instead of eating fruit and nuts after coming back, I don't. I drink a big glass of lemon water, and after the second walk, which is, I come back around 11 o'clock, then I have my first food. And it feels so good to do that again. You just feel the energy increasing. So it's difficult, I noticed, with everything that I think I know and all the consciousness that I think I have. I stuck to the pattern of eating early in the morning while I didn't need it anymore. And that kind of darkened my energy. Of course, I became fatter. So that is not so important. I don't think what I look like is important. What I feel like is important. And when I came to the conclusion it's time to go back to intermittent fasting, I had to overcome that fear of losing weight again, because that's actually scary. It happened a couple of times during the past 25 years, and it just leads to very unpleasant symptoms like permanent headache and inflammation all over the body and headache, heart rhythm issues and what have you. So I'm a little bit scared of having that again. But controlling food actually is important, and here follows a section where the focus is on food. You will see. So moderate diet is defined to mean agreeable and sweet food, leaving 1/4 of the stomach free, eaten as an offering to please Shiva. What does that mean? An offering to please Shiva? It doesn't mean that you build an altar in your home and that 1/4 of the food that you prepare, that you put that in the altar. This is what people do. But leaving 1/4 of the stomach free as an offer to Shiva, God Shiva, is about the crown chakra. It means that the reward for not overeating is spirituality. That is why food in the monasteries in Korea is so austere. Not only in the monasteries in Korea, everywhere of course. In the temples and the monasteries, food is very austere. Pure basic and nothing more than that. No bread puddings and what have you. So here the mention of God Shiva is direct reference to the crown chakra, spirituality, spiritual life. Too much food destroys energy, blocks spiritual development. That is how you can see it. 59. The following things are said to be not salutary for yogins. Things that are bitter, sour, pungent, salty, heating, green vegetables other than those ordained, sour gruel, sesame or mustard, oil, sesame, mustard, alcohol, fish, flesh, including that of the goat, curds, buttermilk, horse gram, the fruit of the jujube, oil cakes, asafoetida, and garlic. Have you ever been to a temple in Korea and have lunch there? You can walk in and have lunch in some temples. It's free or it's very cheap or based on donation. The food is very bland. Exactly according to the text here. Why would you need to eat boring, bland food? Because everything described here causes tamas. Food that is very strong in taste generally causes tamas. It can also cause rajas, for example, when it's very spicy, pungent. But you probably also feel some things are mentioned here that you always believed are actually very healthy. That is true. Garlic is very healthy. Garlic is kind of nature's medicine. It's the last one mentioned. Onions are not mentioned here, but Buddhist cuisine never uses onions because onions, like garlic, have a yang constituency, a yang characteristic. So it is considered to be disturbing your balance, your energy balance, your yin-yang balance. Meats, of course, cause such a balance disturbance. But meats are also avoided. Eating of animals are also avoided. The main reason actually for vegetarianism is not related actually to energy balance, but it's because of the practice of non-violence. When you eat animals, that animal has to be killed. And of course you go to the supermarket or the butcher or wherever you go and you buy a neatly packed piece of meat. But somewhere along the line that animal has been killed. It has gone through terrible fear, stress, and what have you. Before it was killed, then it was killed, cut to pieces and neatly packaged. Ask yourself, that's what I do, ask yourself if you would still eat meat if you had to kill that animal yourself. If you had to go to the backyard and kill your own cow, or your own pig, or your own chicken. If you say yes, okay, then eat meat. Why not? If you say, wow, no, if that is the case, then I would never, ever, ever, then maybe you should consider, or at least to eat more consciously and reduce the amount of meat that you eat. Green vegetables are mentioned here. But we think that green vegetables are so healthy. Salads full of green leaves. Healthy, everybody says and thinks. It's true, but they are not complete foods. Leaves, plants have leaves for a limited purpose, which is to convert the energy from the sun into nutrients with which the plant grows and makes new life. The new life is the seeds, the nuts, the beets, the roots that grow either below or even under the ground. Seeds, nuts, beets, and roots all contain all the nutrients that life requires. You take a seed or a root or a beet, you put it in another container and it will grow new life. So each beet, seed, root contains all the ingredients that sustains life, our life. Green leaves have certain valuable vitamins and minerals, but they lack a lot of the vital amino acids, protein, and many other nutrients that you find in the nuts, beets, and seeds. Anyway, you will see there is a sutra. This sutra tells us what is not salutary. It says green leaves. That must have surprised you. Green leaves are good. It's good for digestion also. It's rich in certain vitamins and what have you, and fiber. But it has to be complemented by lots of other. The staple foods as we know them are all grains. Grains, beets, like potatoes. In Europe, potatoes are staple foods. In Asia, grains, like rice or sorghum, are staple. They are staple foods for a reason, because they contain all the nutrients that sustains life. Diets of the following nature should be avoided as unhealthy. Food that having been once cooked has grown cold and is heated again. Food that is dry, devoid of fat, or has an excess of salt or sourness, that is bad or has too much of vegetables mixed with it. Vegetables here is green leaves. Mainly green leaves. So the emphasis, according to the last sentence, is staple foods. That is the majority of the food that you eat, with some added vegetables. Food that having once been cooked and grown cold and then heated again loses part of its nutrition And not only that, when this was written, fridges didn't exist. So food that has been cooked and then left to cool down very quickly, very rapidly develops bacteria that can make you sick. People use this as an indicator that actually you should throw away food after dinner, after the meal has been taken and there is leftover food. So I do not agree with that, because we do have fridges, and if you look at the statistics, huge amounts of food are being wasted, more than 30%. And considering that there are still countries, even continents, where people go hungry, it's just impossible to throw away food that is not bad. And we have fridges, so put it in the fridge. You heat it again, it may lose a little bit of its nutritional value, but throwing it away, in my opinion, is much worse than eating food that has lost a little bit of its nutritional value. I never throw away food unless there is smells bad or there is mold growing on it. Good. 61. In the beginning, fire, women or men, and journeys should be avoided. For thus, Goraksha says, association with bad company, basking in the fire, that basking near, that has been added later. So association with bad company, fire, women or men, long journeys, bathing early in the morning, fasting, etc., and hard physical activity should be avoided. Swatmarama says women should be avoided. Do not feel bad about that. Simply try to understand that this was written when yoga was predominantly a male affair. 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 5,000 years ago, it was men that engaged with yoga. And you were told to stay away from female company. But since nowadays more women practice yoga, you can just replace that. But what he tries to say here is just avoid any possible kind of distraction. This is laying the foundation for successful yoga practice, leading to incredible transformation. And the best way to do that is to really focus on it. Avoid any kind of distraction that you can eliminate. Fire is ego, but also ambition. Association with bad company, that is any company that distracts you from practicing yoga. That can be at home. It can be your own partner or your own children. That falls in the category of bad company. So don't take this in a negative way. It simply means anybody in your close proximity that distracts you from what you want to do. And we talked about this before. If you are in a situation in which you share a house with other people, family, roommate, whatever, try to reserve time for yourself when the house is empty, when people are at work or in school or otherwise out the door. Because I've experienced myself practicing with people in the same room, in the same house, is very disturbing. Instead of becoming peaceful, it can actually sometimes make you want to kill somebody who comes along. Long journeys, hard physical activity, bathing early in the morning, yeah, that's a luxury, I think. Fasting. considering that you are in the beginning of your yoga journey here, you are practicing a lot, engaging a lot, so fasting is not a good idea because you need the nutrients. And I have experienced losing too much weight too suddenly several times, so it's not something to be ignored when, not only when you practice yoga, when things change in life, another job, or moving to another house, another city, another country, it always absorbs a lot of nutrients. And if it doesn't soon settle down, you are going to use more nutrients than you absorb, and then you will end up losing too much weight too suddenly as a result. 62. The following things are suitable to be taken by the yogin: wheat, rice, barley, the grain called sashtika, and purified food: milk, ghee, brown sugar, butter, sugar candy, honey, dry ginger, the vegetable called pataloka, and the 5 pot herbs: green gram, and pure water. So, first of all, the first foods that are mentioned here, it's all grains. It's all staple foods: wheat, rice, barley, the grain called sashtika. These are all seeds. If you take these grains from the plant and you put them in a pot of soil, it will grow a whole new plant that will produce new seeds. So full of life, full of vitality. It's also the reason why it's important to eat whole foods. Try to avoid white bread, white rice. Anything that is processed. Don't be a radical, but generally the staple foods are best to be in their most original state as they grow, because the modern way of processing food is done to make them more attractive. White rice is more attractive than brown rice. It's smoother in your mouth, chews more easily, it looks more pretty. But the brown rice, the brown that they take off of it, the husk that they take off of it, contains all the nutrients. White bread, white rice often leads to obstipation. It obstructs the digestion. But on the opposite side, if you eat them in their whole state, they actually enormously stimulate digestion because of all the fiber that they contain. So try to pursue to eat whole foods as much as possible. When I make bread pudding, in spite of all the sugar and cream, fat, I do use whole wheat bread. That's the compromise I make too. I only use whole wheat bread. I never use white. Anyway, but surprisingly, after milk and ghee, which are the superfoods of the past, brown sugar, butter, sugar candy, honey, dry ginger, these are things that we are told to avoid. How is that possible? Strange. Well, this also was written in a time when these products described here, milk, ghee, sugar, honey, brown sugar, those were very, very luxurious foods and very difficult to get for most normal people. And if you were able to get some, you would use it for special occasions, like festivities. Which means people had too little of it rather than too much. So it's actually full of energy. Sugar, honey, brown sugar, what have you, full of energy. But we live now in a time that processed foods contain so much of it that we are poisoning ourselves with it. And that explains the discrepancy between the advice here to take those foods to be healthy and full of energy, as opposed to the modern day that we live in, where you're actually advised to try to avoid it as much as possible. We just get too much of it, and then it starts poisoning us from the inside out. 63. The yogin should take nourishing and sweet food mixed with ghee and milk. It should nourish the dhatus and be pleasing and suitable. You may not remember, but the dhatus are the 7 building blocks that are represented by the 7 trunks of Ganesha, as he is being used as a symbol of Muladhara Chakra. Muladhara Chakra is at the root of our existence. It is where life originates, where we manifest into physical matter. And there were 7, Ganesha had 7 trunks that represented plasma, blood, bone tissue, muscle tissue, fat tissue, marrow, nerve tissue, and the 7th one was sperm and ovum. So in increasing complexity. So using that symbolism indicates that the food described here provides all the essential nutrients that we need to sustain a healthy life. '64. Any person who is not lethargic in the pursuit of different forms of yoga attains perfection. Siddhi. Attains perfection through practice. I should make that one sentence. Attains perfection through practice, be he young, old, or even very old, sickly or weak. The good news here is yoga is fit for everybody. Sometimes people call me with interest in the course and they say, I'm not sure if I'm fit for this because I'm so stiff. Or I'm not sure if I can join this course because I haven't exercised for so long and my condition is very poor. My answer is always, I'm not really saying it that bluntly, but the worse your condition, the more you will benefit from yoga practice. If you're already in a perfect condition, who needs yoga? Yoga is fit for everybody, if you approach it in the way that we do. There is no perfection, we don't pursue perfection. It's all about energy. It's all about what you feel. So each individual will practice in their own way, depending on what they feel are their possibilities, their abilities, and their limits, their limitations. The sutra is also very clear. Yoga only works if you practice. The following sutras, they always make me smile. They elaborate on this. But yoga doesn't work if we don't practice. Yoga is an incredibly interesting science, for sure. But at the same time, it's also a practical science. We need to practice the science. We need to practice. Actively engage, otherwise it won't work. The next sutra says, one who is intent on practice will obtain siddhi, not one who is idle. Yoga siddhi is not obtained by a mere reading of the scriptures. So only reading about yoga philosophy, which is of course very interesting, does not do it. Is incomplete. we need to get off our butt onto our mat or blanket and start practicing. We have to move. And I hope that you have felt this yourself already. That you can compare between the periods that you're lazy and just don't practice, or distracted, of course, busy with other things, and the periods that you actually were able to practice on a regular basis, like say 6-7 days a week. There is such a huge difference between day and night, which proves if you don't practice, it just doesn't work. 66, he tries to rub it in a little bit more. Siddhi is not achieved by wearing the dress of a yogi or by talking about it. Practice alone is the cause of success. This is the truth without a doubt. Now, there is a very interesting documentary which I think they have now put behind a paywall, but it was available free before. I think it's called Kumar. Kumar is about an Indian guy who was born in the United States. He's an IT specialist from Silicon Valley. Very smart, very intelligent, who one day he decided to do an experiment. He dressed up like a yogi, turban around his head. He was born in the States, so pure American actually, but he adopted a funny Indian accent, and he started acting like a swami, like a guru. And he got many followers. And the point he was making is that the world of spirituality is so full of fakers, so full of frauds. Swatmarama says, just wearing the clothes of a yogi doesn't make you a yogi, which Kumar clearly proved. It's very interesting. But look it up, Kumar. If you're a little bit clever with internet, you'll probably find one that you can watch without having to pay for watching. I watched the whole documentary, and for me it confirmed many things that I already know. What is a little bit scary about it is that so many people are so gullible, are so easy to be cheated. But somebody who looks fancy and says some mysterious things can get a lot of followers who innocent people are actually, they are looking for something. They are looking for truth. They're looking for answers. And they just get lost. It's very difficult to find proper sources. Well, I know many of our students have been on a journey basically doing the same, trying to find answers, trying to find insight and knowledge. And very frustrating. It often takes years before finding something valuable. '67, and the last one, last sutra of chapter 1. The asanas, the different kumbhakas, and the excellent karanas are all in the course of Hatha Yoga to be practiced till the fruit of Raja Yoga is obtained. It sounds a little bit strange and a little bit superficial, but I think from the beginning I've tried to explain that Raja Yoga is not a yoga, or actually it is. But when it is mentioned in this way, and it has been mentioned in this way before, in other sutras that we read, it is not referring to a practice, but it's referring to a development, a condition. Which condition? The crown chakra opening, consciousness awakening. So Raja Yoga is a condition that is brought about by systematically going through the framework of practice that Hatha Yoga is presenting. So Raja Yoga here in this context is the royal condition. The condition where your royal characteristics, which are embedded in the crown chakra, they start manifesting. So again, yoga is a science, but a practical science, and we need to engage to make it work. We need to practice. We need to have some discipline. Otherwise, it simply cannot work. But if we do, if we have the discipline, the courage, it leads to amazing transformation, amazing results. Questions? Okay, let's have a short break.